Society has this weird habit of looking at someone who spends a lot of time alone and immediately thinking, there must be a problem, right? It's often framed as some kind of failure or a symptom of loneliness. But what if it's not a problem at all? What if for so many of us, solitude is actually a sign of something much, much deeper, something that's been purposefully designed? Today we're going to explore the hidden architecture of solitude. Okay, so let's just dive right in with a question that I think sits at the very heart of this whole experience. If you prefer your own company, I am almost certain you've asked yourself this. It's that little whisper in your head, the one that's been fed by a culture that tells us we are failing if we aren't constantly connected. But the answer is so much more complex and frankly, way more interesting than you might think. So, where does all this pressure even come from? Well, it's not just in your head, that's for sure. It gets triggered by real things, like the pitying looks you get when you're out alone. Or it's that modern notification trap, where a silent phone can literally make you feel like a social failure. And all of this, it just feeds this internalized belief, this malfunction myth, that if you're alone, you must be broken. Today, we're going to completely dismantle that myth. So let's start taking that myth apart piece by piece. Our first architecture of solitude isn't built on failure at all. It's built on intelligence. And this brings us to this really fascinating concept from evolutionary psychology called the Savannah Theory of Happiness. The basic idea is that for a certain type of mind, the standard rules of social happiness, well, they just don't apply. Okay, so this is the crucial point. For most people, the equation is simple. More time with friends equals more happiness. But for people with very high intelligence, that whole formula gets flipped on its head. More social interaction actually correlates with less happiness. Now, it's not that they're antisocial, it's just that their brains are wired to find fulfillment in other ways, usually through deep, focused thought. And this slide just lays it out perfectly. On the left, you've got the standard equation we're all taught. On the right, the reality for a highly intelligent person. For them, socializing isn't a battery charger. In fact, it can feel like interference, like a major distraction from the complex, internal worlds they are constantly navigating. And this really gets to the why. See, most social interaction is built on what's called maintenance talk. Small talk, gossip, superficial updates. To a deep thinker, this isn't just boring. The source material describes it as physically painful, creating a sensation that their brain cells are literally dying. They crave depth, and when they can't find it, silence is just way more productive and a whole lot less draining. Okay, let's move on to our second architecture. And this one is very different. It's not about preference, it's about protection. In this case, solitude is a fortress, built from the bricks of past trauma. It's a state that's known as hyper-independence. For a lot of people, this path starts way back in an unsafe childhood, a time when relying on others was either dangerous or just deeply disappointing. So to survive, a child learns to need no one. They develop this fierce hyper-independence. The problem is, this survival tactic carries right into adulthood, where the subconscious mind learns to see intimacy itself as a threat. And what's the result? A fortress of isolation, built to keep you safe from a danger that might not even be there anymore. But here's the paradox of the lone wolf, isn't it? The very fortress that you designed to protect yourself also ends up imprisoning you. By handling everything yourself and never asking for help, you send this clear signal to the world that you don't need anyone. And yeah, that keeps the bad guys out, but it also stops genuine connection from ever getting in, leaving you safe, but often starving for the very thing you've walled yourself off from. Now, our third architecture is totally different again. It's biological. It's not a choice or a trauma response. It's a fundamental part of a person's nervous system. We're talking about the highly sensitive person, or HSP. And for them, solitude is all about managing a very unique energy economy. I mean, just look at this number. It's staggering. The brain of an HSP is processing about 10 times more data from their environment than the average person. So they aren't just hearing a conversation. They're noticing the micro-expressions, the tiny shifts in vocal tone, the anxiety in the room, the flickering light in the corner. It is an immense amount of data to process all at once. And look at what that processing costs them. This chart shows the huge difference in energy. For an average person, a 3-hour social event, might mean they need a few hours to chill out and recharge. But for an HSP, that exact same event can be so overstimulating that it can require up to 2 full days of quiet recovery. Socializing isn't free. For an HSP, it has a very, very high energetic price. Yeah, because of their deep empathy and all that data processing, HSPs very often find themselves in these one-sided relationships, pretty much acting as an unpaid therapist for their friends. So over time, they learn to develop this filter for these energy vampires. They start saying no, not because they're unfriendly, but because they have to preserve their own limited energy. And yeah, that often causes their social circle to shrink, leaving only the most reciprocal, healthy connections. And this brings us to our fourth and final architecture. This one is really cool because it reframes solitude not as a permanent state, but as a temporary and totally crucial phase of personal growth. You can think of it as the spiritual shedding, or a chrysalis phase, a time when you are literally outgrowing your old life. This timeline really shows the journey. Maybe you start as a people pleaser, trying to fit into an old version of your life. But then, an awakening happens. You start healing, you start setting boundaries, you start discovering who you really are. And this almost always leads to a chrysalis phase of purposeful isolation, because the new you just doesn't fit with your old tribe anymore. It's a necessary pause before you can go out and find a new group that aligns with your future self. The key here, and this is so important, is that this period of isolation isn't empty. You should really think of it as a waiting room. It's a purposeful space where your subconscious is clearing out all the external noise. And this quiet is what finally allows you to hear your own intuition and get ready for the higher quality life and connections that are on their way to you. So, when we bring all four of these blueprints together, you can really start to see that solitude is rarely a simple story. It's a complex structure, right? And understanding your own personal design, well, that's the key to finding freedom in it, not just loneliness. So we've explored these four totally distinct architectures: the intelligent mind that just craves depth over noise, the fortress of trauma that was built for protection, the highly sensitive system that absolutely must manage its energy, and the chrysalis of growth, that temporary phase right before a major transformation. Any one of these, or hey, maybe a combination of them, could be your story. So, the next time you find yourself wondering if there's something wrong with you for wanting to be alone, just remember this. Your solitude is not an empty room that's defined by who isn't there. It is a purposefully designed space. The only question is, what have you designed yours for?